Hello, I don't usually do tutorial or instructional videos, but I thought it might be fun to look at some things in VCV Rack with sequential switching. So what I've got here in this patch is a drum track, which you can see down here, and then a synth bass line over here. And each one is running through a different method of doing sequencing. So with the drum track, you've got this gate seek 64. And then with the bass track, you've got 4 different address sequencers. So let's start with the drums. I have it set up so that the sequence is controlled by this Polycon 8, which then gets split out by this poly splitter. Each line goes into this sequential switch. So to break this down a little bit, in this Polycon 8, each of these little rotary dials puts out a constant voltage. So we've got the first one set to 1, second one set to 2, third one set to 3, fourth one set to 4. And you can see the sequence number change as I hit these switches. And that's because this poly out is essentially directing this one to here, this one to here, and so on and so forth. So when I hit this button, it switches the input that then gets routed into the sequence number input on the gate seek 64. So if I play this, you can see I can hit this button and it switches my sequence. And same for any of these others. Alright, so on the bass line, I've got 4 different sequencers with 4 different sequences that are each routed into a sequential switch here. And then the output of that goes all the way up to my quantizer, which then goes into this sample and hold module, which then goes into my square wave generator, into a filter, into a VCA with an envelope attached, and over to my mixer. Okay, so if I run this guy, you see right now it's pulling from this first sequence. If I switch it, it goes to the second sequence. Same for the third and the fourth. So far, pretty simple. Now what I've also done here is I have set it up so that I have a controller, these triggers, which will control both of these switches at the same time using their up and down inputs. Now I've swapped them because up, according to the sequential switch, means going up in numbers, whereas I want it to go up visually. So up, 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 down, up, up. You see how it works. So if I run them both at the same time, I can switch both sequences at once. Now, while it's running, I can still switch these independently, but there is a catch. I'll show you. Alright, so I've switched the drums to input 2. Now if I switch them both at the same time, they'll move together. So the drums will go to 3, and the bass line will go to 2. Now if I do a reset on just the drums, you notice it gets out of sync and things get real weird. So if I reset everything, we go back to 1 on the bass, we go back to 1 on the drums, and we also go back to 1 on our sequential switches. So, one other thing I want to mention here is that this sample and hold module, I'm using that because if I'm not using it, let's just bypass it for now. You'll notice that when I switch, you can get some weirdness on the notes if you switch while it's in the middle of a note. So by using the sample and hold, we can avoid that. If you're not familiar with sample and hold, basically what it does is it takes a gate input, which in this I'm just linking it to the clock, which is driving all these sequencers. And then you take an input, and when this gate hits, it'll sample that input and hold on to it so that voltage will not change until it reaches another gate. And so then the output stays constant even if the input changes while the gate is inactive. So that's it. That's the basics of sequential switching. It's pretty simple and easy to do, and that way you can generate little melodies and things that can shift and morph as per your wishes. And you could even do something like hooking this up to a clock that's, say, divided by 8. So let's just do that here. Let's actually divide it by 16 and connect this to the step inputs here. And run it. And you'll notice that every 16 notes, we're going to step. So you can get some additional modulation going on that way. If you wanted to, say, have a drum loop that switched to the next sequence every 16 notes, or every 24 notes, 32 notes, 7 notes, whatever you want. You just hook that clock divider up and attach it to step or up or down or random if you want it to go to a random sequence each time. It's entirely up to you. Switch. 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 So as you see, it's pretty easy to get going with this. The one thing that I would recommend really remembering is the sample and hold for anything that is fine-grained and not just a trigger like a drum. That can really help you to keep it from sounding off when you switch in the middle of a note. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and have fun.